Well, good morning, everyone. It is a cool, beautiful morning, but I admit to our moving very slowly. We had a rather difficult night. My husband had terrible food poisoning, so he was up most of the night doing you-know-what. And after I film this, I'll be going in and making him some dry toast and maybe some scrambled eggs. But before that, I wanted to show you a couple of projects that I have been working on and answer a couple of questions, since I didn't do an FAQ Friday, that some of you have had. So I can't remember who, but someone wanted to know how you make another tier or another ball off of a topiary. Well, here's a perfect example. So on this topiary here, and on that one, on the step below, you can see that there is a stem projection out from the existing ball. Now, I don't want to create a fourth tier on these. These are triples. Let me back up a little bit. But if I did, then I would just allow this to grow. And when it reached the desired height, I would just pinch it off. And then I would have another tier. And by the time it was at the height that I wanted, this stem would probably be stiff enough and turgid enough to ultimately handle the weight and the girth of another ball. So that is how you add another poodle top to a topiary, if that's what you're trying to do. Now, the same principle would apply if you are starting out with just one ball and then growing a second. Now, someone said, well, what if you've got two coming up, or you've got two coming up from the base rather than just one strong central stem? Well, if that's the case, and if the two stems are close together, why then I would just let the two stems grow vertically and then start your second or your third ball. And that basically is another explanation of how you grow a multi-tier topiary. You can see the same principle over there. That area looks rather barren now because I'm kind of cleaning it up and tidying up the potting shed area. So that's how you do it. And on this one, for example, I would just leave this one and pinch off these. It's just one that happens to be growing longer than the others. And that is basically the same principle that applies to whatever topiary you're working on, whether it's boxwood or myrtle. That is just how it works. So let's go out into the yard, and I'm starting to crave a little bit more color. And by color, I even mean just maybe floral beauty in white or pink. No, not a lot of raucous beauty. Now, someone asked what this plant was. I had two more of this same variety that I've moved to another location. But this is called wire vine or angel vine, known as Muhlenbeckia. And if you mulch it, you can grow it in the ground, and it makes a wonderful ground cover. It doesn't always winter over, but it can. Again, if you mulch it and kind of protect it. But I love the way it cascades. And at one time I had the topiaries that I just showed you underplanted in it. And I'm getting ready to do a nighttime tour, a candlelight tour of the backyard for you once I have a chance to do that. Now, if you want more topiary information, you guys, I did a whole series called the Topiary Workshop, I believe, on YouTube, and you can go back and watch that whole series, everything from what kind of plants to use to what kind of containers to use, the tools that I use. All of that is there at your disposal. Free workshop. I did it for Garden Gate Magazine, a project with Garden Gate Magazine a while ago. And I am getting ready to do a long video on all things boxwood. How to care for boxwood, what to look out for, different boxwood varieties, which varieties of boxwood I think are appropriate to what purpose. And I've been pretty busy lately, but I'll get to that. So there's my little boxwood theater, if you will, and a lot of that needs pruning. Just ignore my driveway. There's maybe a project coming up there soon. Lots of berries will be coloring up before long on this Boston ivy, and as the temperatures cool, it is going to be just beautiful and really a gorgeous autumnal palette. And the way the light, the autumn light, comes through the foliage is just something to behold. Now here's a little project that I worked on yesterday. As I told you, this time of year I start consolidating the smaller pots so I don't have as many of them into larger pots, and I did some of that yesterday. But I want to show you this little corner here because I want to and I'm going to do a video on this later, but I want to show you how these blue juniper volunteers, see there's a little baby one there, there's a larger one here. I should have separated them so you could see them better, but they are really just doing beautifully, putting on a lot of growth. For a while they just kind of sat there, but they're putting on a lot of growth, and this little trio will look so dear at Christmas time. I might mulch them in tiny little pine cones or tiny little acorns or something, but that's for another season. And all of these pots with the geraniums are getting a feed on in my potted plants. I'm pretty much organic everywhere else, but in my potted plants, when I want a jolt of new bloom, I will use Miracle Grow or its equivalent. In the beds, I use organic granulars typically. Now there is a nice contrast between clipped and not clipped. See, the one large globe is very tightly pruned. The boxwood next to it is not, and it needs a little working over. This myrtle topiary is very beautifully pruned, and that eugenia in that pot needs some work. Now this little montage of pots right here is what I worked on yesterday. So, and it may not look like it visually from this video, but I promise you this tutor is straight. And this whole area is going to be white and very, very pale pink. So I've given this a good feed, and pretty soon all of this will start cascading out. And you can see I have some more geraniums here at the feet of these two large pots, and they will start filling out. And then this pot, which looks rather scraggly now, I potted up yesterday, and it is going to be beautiful once it gets started. And I planted some more flowering geraniums at the base, and the rest of these are all scented geraniums, which this was such pleasant work, you guys, because it was so fragrant. The air was just infused with their scent. I'll talk about that a little bit more. I like the way the canes look. But I did pinch this back rather dramatically so it will fill out, adopt some color. I like the strappy grass with the white variegation and how it looks with the white flowers next to it. And then I'll put a little surprise in that basket on top. And once it gets to a point where it's a little bit more beautiful, I'm going to show you the composition and how I put it together. I'm also going to do a video on my favorite flowering shrubs, and you guys will definitely want to stay tuned for that. And didn't you enjoy Brandon's garden tour yesterday with that adorable greenhouse and the garden shed? That he did all of that himself is just humbling to me. No matter the weather, those angel wing begonias just continue to perform. And I love huge hanging baskets. And I think next week, I want you guys to stay tuned because I might have a big announcement next week. Keep your fingers crossed, but I think it's going to come to pass and it will be so fun. Very exciting. I'm just extremely pumped about it. So there's my tease. I won't tell you any more until I make the big announcement. I want to show you, I moved this Miss Lemonabelia. This is a Southern Living plant that I just love. A very underused plant, Abeliosar. And look at those sweet white flowers. White isn't necessarily a color that you would associate with late summer or fall, but I just think it's so sophisticated. I think it's appropriate at any time. And if I only had one color in my garden, it would be white. Now I want to give you an update on this area that I was working on the other day. I promised to do so. You see, I removed the large table of topiaries over here. They're just starting, but look at the dahlias that I did a video planting them not too long ago, and those are starting to, the light's not great right now, but they are starting to bloom. And then this is the area that I pruned up. You watched me prune it the other day, and I have remulched this area. I still have to do some pruning on the rows behind it, but this area is so much less congested and so much happier. I've still got to do a bit of pruning and some rearranging in here, but for the most part, the heavy work has been done. Isn't this a glorious scented geranium? I'm going to have my friend Monica out again to let me know exactly which ones are which ones, because I've lost some of the markers, something I promised not to do, and then, of course, I immediately did it. And on LVTV, I talked with my friend Monica at length, who is just the master herb woman. And if you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to check it out. There's just a few more days, and about another week of August that you can get for free. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to give it a test drive. We've been having so much fun in our Facebook group, and I send out a daily newsletter, a daily dose of happiness in the newsletter, where I suggest products, and it's just a short little nugget, a little sweet bonbon for you each day. And the purslane is not in bloom yet. It will be later this morning. But I want to show you, this has been now 2 weeks since I tortured these sunshine ligustrum and put them in these pots. They have just thrived. Look at all of the new yellow growth that's come out. They desperately needed to be repotted. So, there was a naysayer, someone who was understandably a doubting Thomas and wanted to see what they looked like a little bit later to see if they could really be tortured like that in August. And believe me, they look just fine. They are the happier for it. Now again, you can't do this with all plants. but this ligustrum can really take it. It is one of my, I need to do a tour where I just show you my favorite southern living plants. This is a sweet little thing. I moved most of my rosemaries to another location, and it needs a little bit of work, but look at that darling rosemary wreath. And I potted up a distilleum in that square pot, and I really like the way it looks. I pruned it back a little bit and opened up that canopy. And then there's more work to be done, but I did finish up the pruning of the boxwood, and it looks beautiful, if I do say so myself. I'm getting ready to transition to my fall vegetables and herbs. This, you guys, is a topiary that is just a common myrtle. You often see it growing as a hedge, but it makes good topiary material too. It's not the compacta myrtle. I've got a small pot of it on the other side. I'm getting ready to water so my hoses aren't put up. I need to do a video on hose etiquette because I'm the worst at it, but it's just me most of the time around here, so. Oh, I hear some lovely music in the background, and pretty soon I'll probably hear some church bells, which is nice. Another sound that I love in the background of my garden that I get all of the time are train whistles and the sounds of trains in the not too far distant location, and it's just, and as if on cue, can you hear it? There's the sound of a train whistle in the back. My family loves to travel by train. And hopefully before too long, we'll be able to do that kind of travel again. Good morning, birds. Well, there is just a little tour for you. This is kind of an aside, but I want you guys to put up a prayer, say a prayer, send positive vibrations and loving thoughts to my friend Lourdes, who is going through a difficult time. She lives in California where the wildfires are, and she just lost her father. And we have made a connection. And so any kind of positivity you can send her way would be greatly appreciated by both her and myself. So from the birds and my potager and me, you guys have a lovely Sunday. Be safe and be well. I'm going to go in and make my hubs some scrambled eggs. Take care.